And I've asked Member Murray to offer the invocation, and afterwards, if you all rise with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we thank thee for the chance that we have to be together as a planning commission and the members of the public. We thank thee for the opportunity we have to serve. We ask thee, Father, that we will have thy spirit at this meeting of fairness and a desire and an ability to do thy will and the will of the members of Morgan County. Thank thee for the many blessings we have. We say these in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the approval of the agenda, and we do have one change, and so in the motion, we'd like to strike agenda item 9. It is going to be renoticed. So in the motion, can you strike agenda item 9? That's WPR Concept Plan 3. So I'm ready for a motion to approve the agenda with that change. Okay, I have a motion by Member Wilson. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Member Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, declaration of conflict of interest. Does any member of the commission have a conflict with any item on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the public comment time. Tonight, we have some administrative items, 6, 7, and 8. Those do not have a public hearing associated with those items. So if you wish to comment on any one of those items, now will be your time in public comment. Excuse me. However, we have two legislative items, the Cottonwoods Development Agreement, as well as a code text amendment. They each have their own public hearing. So if you'd like to comment on either one of those, number 10 or number 11, we ask that you keep your comments until the time that we open up a public hearing for those two agenda items. So now the time is yours. If you'd like to make any comment regarding an agenda item or any other item you wish to address the Planning Commission, now would be your turn. If you'd step up to the lectern and state your name for the record. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with our first administrative item, number 6, a discussion decision on the Eggett Ranch Small Subdivision Preliminary and Final Plat.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to the members of the Planning Commission. This is application 24.010. An item that was heard in the last Planning Commission meeting on September 12. Due to discussion had there, I'll just briefly introduce that the project location is at approximately 306 West Woods Creek. The current zoning is A20. The acreage that would be affected by a new subdivision is 28.05 acres, and the request is for the preliminary and final plat approval for a subdivision, which doesn't go on to the County Commission for further approval, is approved by this body tonight, of a one-lot subdivision. Exhibit C will be of interest to the Planning Commission. That is the recorded access agreement that we do have on file with the county, signed by the applicant and again on file. And so that was an ask from this body here. Another condition was added to the findings, to the recommendation section. I'll just read it. 5, that an amendment letter from the Weber Morgan Health Department regarding a shared well be provided prior to recordation. Madam Chair, the applicant is in the audience tonight, and he just informed me before the meeting that that letter is very close to being prepared. He'll have it shortly, and so we'll definitely have that before recordation. Madam Chair, that's the agreement.
Thank you.
Yield my time. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Thank you. And if the applicant would like to come up, I have maybe a question for the applicant.
Hi, I'm Roger Eggett. Sorry I wasn't here a couple weeks ago. I watched it live. It was interesting, but I did want to thank Josh and Jeremy for all the work they've done. We started this process 14 months ago. It's been a long process, and they've worked hard on it for 14 months, and I appreciate that. Happy to answer your questions.
My question is, do you have a maintenance agreement, or is there one for the private lane?
Yes, it's attached.
Well, that's the easement, that's your access easement, but there's also a private lane portion that you are using through Pettit Ranchettes, or not?
We have a maintenance agreement that should cover everything from beginning to end.
Okay,
That's my understanding, and from my review of it, it does.
okay, thank you. Anyone else have a question for the applicant?
Just a follow-up, Jeremy, have you seen that agreement?
On your screen, you'll notice that halfway through the first paragraph, it says of 667 Hardscrabble, an easement for the construction, operation, maintenance, repair, and replacement of a roadway to serve as ingress, egress for all purposes, along with all necessary accessories and appurtenances thereto.
Can I? Sorry. This easement, this is just where we live now,
Right,
but the maintenance agreement and the easement affects the parcels which go through the Krantz and the Pettit property. And these pertain to their parcels.
okay, thank you. Any more questions for the applicant or staff?
This, Josh, this is an easement, right? Is it also a maintenance agreement?
This grants easement access for the applicant to access their property through a private lane,
Right.
and it includes the maintenance agreement along with that. And so the private lane is already in place. This adds him as one of the signatories that would help maintain that.
Okay, thank you.
There is a separate maintenance agreement that's notarized by all three of us, and the county has possession.
Okay, thank you. You're bringing that up.
Josh, while they're bringing it up, what took so long? Why did it take 14 months? I feel sorry for Mr.
Eggett.
Don't blame me.
I'm not. I'm just asking because I'm thinking about procedural stuff that we need to improve on.
It's not procedural stuff.
Okay.
A lot of the delay was from his surveyor.
I understand that one well.
Yeah. This is it. Just review this, but it does show that the three parties, we collectively agreed to maintain that easement, and this form is signed and notarized by all three of us.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no more questions for the applicant or for staff, I'm ready for a motion.
you want me to read it over? Madam Chair, I move we approve the Agate Ranch Small Subdivision Preliminary and Final Plat Application Number 24.010, allowing for a one-lot subdivision of land located at approximately 306 West Woods Creek Road, based on the findings with the conditions listed in the staff report dated September 26, 2024. Whatever conditions are listed.
Okay, I have a motion by member Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and a second by member Murray. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Okay, the next item is a Pioneer Ranch CUP.
This is for application number 24.047. The property is located at approximately 12,500 South Jeremy Ranch Road. It encompasses approximately 1,084 acres, and the zoning is a split zone ME160 F1. The applicant is requesting conditional use permit approval for C2, which means that you will grant the approval to that. To build a private resort recreational campground. And if Jeremy could bring up the text in our code, I'll just read it directly from that for you. While he's doing that, a conditional use permit is a permitted use. By state statute, it cannot be denied as long as any perceived negative impacts can be reasonably mitigated. And the legal term there is reasonable, and so if you have questions of what that means, I will turn it over to the county deputy attorney to answer the definition of reasonable. The land use section in our zoning ordinance, unless we quoted it. It's the multiple use agriculture land use table. If you scroll down through the land use table, 3/4 of the way down. Keep going. Keep going. It's that right there. It's private park or recreational grounds, private recreational camps, or resorts, including accessory or supporting dwelling or dwelling complexes and commercial services related to those. This is a permitted use with a C2 conditional use permit, and they are requesting that. They have an existing cabin or home on the property right now, and the applicant can speak more to that, but they're requesting additional resort complex areas for family resort. Staff is recommending approval, and with that I can answer any questions you may have, or turn it over to the applicant.
On private, is that referring to their ownership, or I mean it just their use?
It's related to the use, so it would be private use, but it also allows public, so private park, or I think there's public in there as well.
Madam Chair. So, the code references dwellings. I'm assuming that doesn't, and there will be no need to subdivide in order to build these dwellings later on?
That's correct. In fact, this would mean that it could not be subdivided. In order to subdivide, they'd have to go through, because of the size of the acreage, they could go through a minor lot subdivision to carve out 1 acre parcels, but because of that, it would stretch out the infrastructure they would have to put in, and it would separate the other land by, in each 1 acre lot that would be created by 1,000 feet. And so instead, they wanted to do the private park recreational grounds, which would cluster the residences closer together, and it wouldn't be divided.
These could be permanent residences.
No, they would be recreational dwellings, based on our code, because MU 160 and the F1 talks about recreational dwellings.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any limit on how many dwellings they could have?
No, our code does not restrict that.
Okay, well, maybe I'll ask the applicant, but in his narrative, he's saying that there will be 6 sites and 3 per site, so he's saying 18. Do we limit in one of our conditions the number, or is that open-ended?
I don't think legally we can limit that unless you can perceive a reasonable negative impact from that, and then that would be a condition that you could attach.
So that was kind of the first part of my question is if it's private, so he could rent these out. And if we have no limit, could he rent them out? I mean, he could build 2,000 units, right? I mean, this is,
Well, he doesn't have the room for 2,000 units, plus the recreational dwellings. On top of that, you have an area of the county that I don't believe UDOT plows all year round, so access is
limited.
limited. You can ask him his intent. That is one of the things you can ask. You can't place reasonable restrictions. It is a conditional use permit. But I would recommend you ask him to clarify.
Any more questions for staff before we
Would-
move on?
So will they need to get a site plan to move forward with construction and development of the site?
No, they wouldn't need a site plan if it's limited in scope. If they want to bring in the commercial type uses or expand it, then our code has specific things that require a site plan. If it's just the dwelling complexes for 7 cabins or whatever, then no, a site plan would not be required.
Is there any involvement from our fire department assessing the fire risk of this? And if they were to put in, let's say, 500 units recreationally?
There won't be 500 units. That just will not happen. Number one, they'd have to do well and septic. Well and septic would be approved through Weber Morgan Health Department. That just will not happen. They don't have the land for that.
Even as is though, is there any involvement from a fire risk standpoint?
Fire steps in and they review the proposals of any new building when building permits are requested.
I guess I have one other thing. Looks like there might be a grammatical error on page 3, right before the code analysis. First, that paragraph right above it says, any conditions that staff or the planning commission come up with should aim to ensure that the printing business operates.
Yep. Sorry, we missed that.
All right.
You can cross that out.
Okay.
I just had one quick question. On the off chance that that property was ever sold to somebody, what does that look like then?
Conditional uses run with the land. They are not owner specific. So if they were to sell the land to somebody else, then that individual would have all the rights and privileges that come with the entitlements granted by the CUP.
Thank you. This, if the motion is the way it is worded, this could not be commercial? Or would they?
Well, the commercial services based on our code are limited in scope and should support the dwelling complexes for the private or public resort. So the commercial uses, they can do some commercial there but it has to be related to what they're proposing to do.
I was just thinking in terms of on the chance they did sell and someone wanted to buy it and turn it into, I understand it's way out and highly unlikely, but I can just clarify. So, okay.
Okay. And there seems to be, okay, no, I think my question would be more toward the applicant, so. And unless anyone has more for staff. Okay. Thank you. The applicant, come forward, please.
Madam Chair, panel, committee members, my name's Rick Sutherland. I'm the owner of this property. My wife and I own this property. We've lived there for about 24 years now. We've had to maintain the road to get there. The road is now closed, literally gated and closed during the winter. But even prior to that, we're the only ones who've ever maintained it. In terms of our intent, we have a trust in place, and as soon as this is all settled, we'll put all the property into the trust. It prohibits the sale of the property. This is a legacy for our children and our grandchildren. We have no intention of selling it and have no intention of allowing them to sell it. So it can't be sold. It's legally prohibited. As soon as we put it into the trust, it will be. So
So it's an irrevocable trust?
it is.
Will be.
Or will be. I do have, yeah, that's, I have a question though. You just said you have lived there, so I take that as primary residence, but it's,
Yeah,
this has been your primary residence?
has for 24 years.
Okay. And the other thing, maybe it's semantics, but you keep talking about building homes, and homes to me are primary residence.
That's our intention, yeah, to allow that to occur for our family. So there seems to maybe be a disconnect here, but that was my intention, yes. And there will never be more than that either. I have 17 grandchildren. That's why the 18 lots. So they divide equally. We have one extra, but that's why the number.
I guess we're going to have questions because primary residents aren't recreational dwellings.
The F1 zoning residentially allows for recreational dwellings. The MU 160, however, that area does allow for primary residences. So if the private resort is to be used on a perpetual basis, that would be part of the private resort. There's nothing that restricts the use of it being used permanently on a permanent basis. I don't think it's defined in our code one way or the other.
Isn't MU 160 though only one primary residence per every 160 acres?
It's one dwelling unit per 160. They do have the option of going through the minor lot subdivision, which would allow them to create multiple lots that were 1 acre in size, separated by 1,000 feet. I'd have to look at how many they could create that way.
What the applicant wants to do, I don't have a problem with, but I think it's more of under the conditional use permit for this camp and resort. So I don't know what, that's my feeling. So I don't know if there's an easy, quick change for the applicant, or
Change in what way?
the what's being presented is, to me, more of not a permanent residence. It's a dwelling that you would come up and use for camping or hunting, whatever you're doing up there on the site. So, I mean, there's more than enough land for him to do whatever he wants to do from 18 home sites on there, but just the way that it's going about it, it seems like we're trying to kind of shove something in that's a little bit not correct.
No, the goal was so that we wouldn't have to deal with the minor subdivision up there and dealing with the distances and creating a subdivision out in the middle of nowhere. The private resort, I felt as a zoning administrator, was the route to go because it would allow for the clustering of the dwellings. I think the 18 is more than what I remember when we discussed. I thought there was 7, but it doesn't really change it because our code doesn't limit the number.
But even if you were going to do the minor with 1,000, you could only have maximum 10 under the minor.
That is true, separated by 1,000 feet.
And you wouldn't be here.
And it wouldn't be 10 clustering, so you'd
No,
have
no.
one lot, then each of the other lots would have to be separated by 1,000 feet.
I guess there are issues with primary residence and recreational dwelling.
Yeah, you're the decision-making body here, so I'll let you talk with the applicant a little bit more. How about that?
I certainly can't be certain that any or all of my children or grandchildren will ever move there, but I just want to have that as an option for them. I know that my one son, who resides in St. George, has no intention of building anything permanent. He's going to park his fifth-wheeler up there in the summer and take it out in winter so it doesn't get crushed by the snow.
I don't think we have a problem with permanent structures. It's the use as a primary residence as opposed to recreational.
And I don't personally have an issue with primary residences. I just don't know, I don't know that we're going through the right process to get that approval.
Yes, agreed.
That's unfortunate.
I would recommend that we maybe go through the right process, because I don't want him to go through the process and get a property that's not what you want for your family. If you do want primary residence for your 18 grandchildren, and you end up getting
Sounds
lots of fifth
overwhelming.
wheels.
I'm right, but Josh is saying he thinks this is the best route to go. So I'm perplexed.
Yeah, the code allows for a conditional use permit, C2 approval. Again, C2 by state statutes cannot be denied. You can attach reasonable conditions to mitigate reasonably anticipated negative impacts. That's what you can do. If you think that 18 dwellings up there is too much, then you can restrict the number of dwellings. If you feel that it should be a temporary basis or not, that again is up to you to make the determination. But according to state statute, a CUP cannot be denied if you perceive negative impacts and they can be reasonably mitigated. And in this case, as a zoning administrator, I believe any negative impacts that you can come up with can be reasonably mitigated. And as a zoning administrator, this is the process that I believe that he needs to be going through.
Can I ask a couple questions? Josh, I'm having a hard time picturing what this is going to look like. Like, how much ground are we talking that we're clustering on? Like, how many acres are you talking? Do you know?
Jeremy, can you go to the maps, please?
And then the second question I have is, what are these structures? Are they going to be like a house, like a 1,500 square foot house, 2,000 square foot house? That's what you're looking at?
I'll let the applicant kind of walk you through the process. Go back up to the. That shows the entire amount of land. And then I'll let the applicant discuss what's there currently and what he's proposing.
So the entire area where these clusters are located is roughly 200 acres. And that's selected because of the topography of the area. If you look down along the right-hand side where it says Deer Hollow, that's the East Canyon Jeremy Ranch Road. That's the dirt road that goes from East Canyon to Jeremy Ranch. It's a seasonal road, but that's it. Just to the left of that road, that's our pasture area. That's where we winter all of the animals. We have some barns down there, and those are irrigated fields where we harvest some of our hay, but we still have to buy quite a bit from other neighbors. Then you go up where it looks kind of rough in the picture. That's a very steep side hill. And the road goes along it, does a switchback, and comes up to what's kind of a mid-range area. It's slightly sloped, but fairly flat. That's where all of these proposed sites are clustered. When you go above that, it's very mountainous. It's heavily foliaged. We have some springs up there, trails that we maintain for riding and in the summer, and we could cross-country skiing in the winter. But that area is about 200 acres, give or take, roughly. And those clusters are between, I think the closest one might be about 600 feet. The other ones are as much as 1,100 feet from each other. It's hard to appreciate the scale when you're looking at this magnitude. This property is about 4 miles long and about a half mile wide.
Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Can we pull up the code again? I just wanted to look at it one more time. Is that doable? Conditional use.
The state statute is 17-27A-506. And again, that does state that a land use authority shall approve a conditional use if reasonable conditions are proposed or can be imposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use in accordance with the applicable standards. Just sounded like I spoke lawyer, didn't I?
You are one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 17-27A-506.
I think in our code, it refers to one home per lot.
That's true for a subdivision. That is true. They're not subdividing. They are applying for a CUP, C2, for a private resort. And it doesn't say that. In
Yeah.
fact, the wording in our code says dwelling complexes.
And I don't have a problem with that or the number, but it's primary residences.
It
I guess-
doesn't distinguish in our code whether it has to be primary, secondary, or it doesn't talk about that. Recreational dwelling is a land use that is specifically called out in the land use table and is specifically defined. But the definitions of our code do not define resort. That I remember.
Yeah, recreational dwellings, a cabin, yes.
So Josh, just to challenge you, like with the RVs, if you're living in your camper van,
Yeah, an RV is not considered a dwelling. An RV is a recreational vehicle. Using recreational vehicles on a basis on property is only permitted in the county on recreational vehicle parks. They are not meant for permanent habitation. However, enforcement-wise, yeah, I don't know how I enforce somebody parking and using an RV on property that is out in the county without a code enforcement.
another option for the planning commission is if you guys don't feel comfortable approving this, you could refer it to the county commission as a C3.
That is true.
My worry is it's a slippery slope. So somebody like, again, I'm not concerned about this specific applicant, let's say Nine Springs said, okay, we want a CUP and we want this, and we're gonna have recreational dwellings.
Well, they'd have to work with Weber Morgan Health Department and get approval for all the septics that they were going to propose to put in there, all the wells. They'd have to purchase all the well rights for each of the dwelling complexes.
You could put sewer and water in. I don't think it,
So do you see where I'm just, so if we do something like this, then does it open a door to other people coming in and something similar and saying, oh, we can kind of end around it, our process?
Other people who have property in the 820 or the ME 160 can apply for a private resort, and they will be treated the exact same way, and the code will be interpreted the exact same way. It is a CUP, a C2. If the Planning Commission does not feel comfortable making that decision, then push it to the County Commission and let them make the decision.
And there's no definition of recreational dwelling unit in our
No,
code.
recreational dwelling is defined, but that's not what they're applying for. They're applying for the private resort.
Private park or private recreational camps or resorts. Okay. And there's no.
My question to you, in essence, you're creating a subdivision up there. And so my question is, down the road, are these folks gonna want snow plows, and are gonna want road services and all that? So we're creating a subdivision, in essence, like this. So if we're gonna do that, then in my opinion, we could probably do it through a subdivision for that many units.
Yeah, it's not a subdivision.
But
They're
this-
not dividing
I'm saying
land.
to do that, Josh, to go through the subdivision process for it.
Yeah, no.
But so this is a private road, so it would be privately
No,
maintained.
it's not private road. It's
They-
it's a public road, but I believe it's owned by UDOT, and they don't maintain it. They close it.
no, the road's on their place to the
Oh, on
different
theirs.
dwellings.
Yeah, those would be private.
So you're creating 18 homes up there, whatever they need. If it's a private agreement, then I would feel more comfortable throwing this to the commission if they want to agree with them on it. Then I'm good
Janet?
with that.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I'm just thinking this through, right? To me, I agree. It sounds like we're creating a subdivision. Technically, we're not, okay, but it looks like a duck, okay? Would an enforceable condition be that a trust be recorded prohibiting the sale of any one or individual residence in perpetuity?
You can't legally sell residences that are not legal lots. So, in order to even sell a home, it has to be on its own lot. They could sell the entire property, but that's it.
And I also think you need to identify under the statute what those detrimental effects that you are trying to reduce or mitigate with conditions. And I think that has to be articulated on the record as well.
Yeah.
Even if you went with it and you limited his amount, I don't really want to do that to him either. So I'm saying back to the commission is, it seems reasonable to put this to the county commission and let them, if they want to make an agreement that way. I don't feel like I'm qualified to tell them what the agreement should be right now. But I don't like the idea of throwing up that many houses up there, because I don't know what's going to happen down the road.
And again, just worrying about like if we aren't approving a subdivision and they're not going through like a plot, like a subdivision plat review, are we worried about like ingress and egress and access in the case of fire or any of those things, or do we just say it's recreational So they'll figure it out.
No, the fire department will get involved during the building permit process for each of the structures that are built up there.
Okay.
And they will have requirements whether to sprinkle them or to put in a fire access road. Whatever the fire department requires as the authority having jurisdiction, or the AHJ, they will require, and that'll be part of the requirement for the building permit before it's even issued.
Okay.
Certification from Weaver Morgan Health Department for the well and the septic will also be required at each building permit as well. And if they can't get that, they can't get it.
To your point, since the gentleman says he's going to put it in an irrevocable trust and just limit it to the 18, making him go to the county commission seems to be just an extra step for no real good reason. Because they'll probably end up proving it. That would be my guess. It could be wrong. I think the important thing is put a condition to say, okay, no more than 18, and let him go.
We
through
can't do
the
that.
building process.
Right, we can't put a condition in.
I think we can.
No, if you believe that that many dwellings is a negative impact or a negative situation, then you can limit that based on state statute. But if it's something that can be limited to mitigate the negative impact, then you shall approve. That is the language. And shall is a mandate. There's no wiggle room there.
Yeah.
So if we approve it the way it stands, the county's not obligated to maintain roads or do anything more than they're currently doing for the gentleman and his wife who are currently living there now.
No.
Kind of some questions on private roads. Do we have any standards on private roads that they'd have to have?
These technically are glorified driveways, not really roads.
Okay.
What I would imagine the fire department would require is a minimum of 20 feet, at least all-weathered surface compacted so that it can support a 75,000-pound apparatus with turnarounds every 750 feet or less.
It sounds like there may be some steep roads too. Is there grading? And
There is a maximum grade of 12% in our code. Fire department, I know Morgan County Fire Department has been okay with 12% in the past, but Mount Green, they stick with 10% maximum. And so there are things that would be considered during the building permit processes where they'd have to show that they comply with those standards.
so each building would have to have that review from the fire department.
Oh, each building will have that review. It's required in our code.
Is length considered on that as well?
The only length requirements of our code that our code has for driveways is that if it's less than 50 feet or greater than 50 feet. It doesn't limit the maximum. We have private street standards or street standards that limit dead ends, but that wouldn't apply to driveways.
And would they have to have a road maintenance agreement for the private?
It's their own private driveways. You don't have to
For
give
the
yourself, yeah, you don't give yourself easements.
No, I mean like a maintenance agreement for the emergency vehicles on the private
For,
road.
ambulance and,
Oh,
That they maintain it.
well, maintaining that would be a requirement, so. Yeah, sorry.
The other option you guys have is if you want to refer it to the commission, I mean, you can approve it with conditions and suggest conditions for the commission, county commission to approve or deny.
in the conditions, it talks about recreational structures. So we're okay with just leaving that in? On condition number 2.
Where are
We're
you reading?
identifying them as recreational.
Oh, that all recreational structures and facilities shall comply with the setback requirements. So they are, it is a private recreational resort, but it doesn't fall under the definition of recreational dwelling. Yeah.
We probably need a cleanup in our code.
We need a new code.
I'm glad you said it first.
Yeah, I didn't say first.
I don't have a problem with a resort up there. I'd be more comfortable with a site plan requirement. I understand that's not in our code.
If you want them to go through the site plan process to plot it out with grading drainage plans for the driveways, things like that, that is, if that's a condition that you think would help mitigate it, then I would attach that.
Madam Chair, I'm ready to record stipulations if you want to make some specific ones.
Okay. So if we so move that we want to decide, or even if we're going to recommend, we can add some conditions. And if it has to do with health and safety as far as access of emergency vehicles, I think we can ask for a site plan to make sure that it is accessible to the emergency vehicles. If you could come up with a reason, if you want to limit, you would need to, I think, come up with a reason why you think it's necessary to limit the number.
We need a why.
What are we mitigating?
Yes, you need a why. What are you mitigating? What detrimental thing are you mitigating?
Can I interrupt? The thing that I always look at is timeline. And I don't know what's going to happen. Explain to me what an irrevocable trust means. Can someone buy that from them? Can they sell it? I'm asking you, Jen.
You're asking me? I don't think your decision can be made upon whether or not they're doing an irrevocable trust.
Okay, well, if you can't do that, you've created a subdivision up there that somebody can come along and buy and do what they want. And then the county's, what is the county going to do at that point in time?
It's not a subdivision, so you have
I know it's
multiple
not right now,
structures.
Josh, but it could be. You don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. I remember predecessors of yours telling me that we could put things in perpetuity and they'd never come out, and they do. You don't know.
I can't change what my predecessors have done.
You don't know any better than
The
anyone
code.
else does.
Well, it's not a subdivision now. That's not what they're requesting.
It will be if, I mean, you're creating 18 homes with 18 lots. What do you call that?
Not lots. I'm sorry, they're not lots. It's a single parcel of land. And a single parcel of land, if they're applying for a private resort, is allowed by our code in a C2, right?
Oh,
It's not a subdivision.
Not
No,
now, no. It's
subdivision.
not, you're right. It's not right now. I've said my piece. I'm done talking.
I'm also comfortable moving this to discussion with the commission. I have no qualms about that with our recommendations, but doesn't seem like we're really all on the same page here, so.
I would prefer that we somehow be able to handle this out amongst ourselves.
Okay.
I mean, I think if we have concerns, then maybe we can work with staff or the applicant to mitigate, or maybe put these mitigation things as conditions. It's just my piece.
Okay, Jeremy will type if you have suggestions for conditions.
Well, what are our concerns? We're concerned about, I think you've got Chairman, you have a legitimate concern about access for emergency vehicles. And if we could have some sort of review and approval at staff level that whatever's being proposed is going to be safe for
For the health
all
and safety,
residents. Yeah, I mean,
general
that,
welfare.
that seems valid. And if a irrevocable trust is recorded prohibiting any future sale of all or part of that property, I mean, I think that's fine.
I don't think you can require that. I would recommend that not be a condition.
Well, let's maybe then
That
back up.
controls-
What would be the desired effect of the trust? I think it would make us feel better that this is not a subdivision that will eventually be open to individual sales. And which is a valid concern. We have subdivision rules and reviews for a reason, right? And so,
So, once again,
I know, Josh, it's not a subdivision.
state
but-
statute, you
but-
can't sell individual residences unless it's subdivided. And how are you going to subdivide a private resort into 160 acres to accommodate each dwelling?
But my point, Josh, is we
Yeah.
have subdivision rules and standards, okay?
That's true, and this
if-
isn't it.
Josh, just a second, okay? If we are creating 6 lots or with
You're not
3
creating lots at all.
If we're creating 6 pads with 3 primary residences on these pads, okay, and these are going to be permanent uses, then we have a potential permanent uses. I could see someone saying, "Well, county, you've got an obligation," and these things that would need to be reviewed and approved would typically take place at a subdivision process, okay?
I
Got it. We're
disagree.
not creating a subdivision, but we're really creating lots or pads.
I don't know how to express this.
We're gonna
There
agree to
is, there's
disagree.
legal terminology that you're using that does not describe
Okay,
what they are doing.
okay. This would create building pads for permanent residences. My concern is if we're going to say, yes, you can move your family up there forever, then do we as a county have obligations for the health, safety, and welfare of those people who are living on those pads that we approved?
Yes, and the fire department will review that during the building permit process to determine the health, safety, and welfare for the fire access, whether the structures need to be sprinkled. Weber Morgan Health Department will be required to look for wells and septics up there if they can even accommodate that many. But those agencies have those jurisdictions. They make those determinations. Right? Our code does not have that. Right? So our code allows for a private resort with a C2 that shall be approved with the negative impacts, with conditions to mitigate the negative impacts.
And what we're doing right now is talking about potential negative impacts, and we're trying to
What
come
you're
up
doing is you're convoluting the request into what it's not. And it's not a subdivision request. They're not dividing land at all. And so that has to leave the conversation. That's my point.
Okay, but they are trying to build permanent residences.
They are not dividing land though, so that part of the discussion needs to stop.
Jeremy, could you do me a favor and pull up our code, the 155.088? And this might be helpful. It does have the minimum acreage for a recreational dwelling. If you look in C,
While you're doing that, could I address the emergency vehicle access that you were asking about? First of all, our roads are far better than the Jeremy Ranch Road. And the Jeremy Ranch Road is, I don't know how many guys have driven on it. It's not exactly a great road. It's pretty rough. Secondly, we are about 15 minutes from the closest fire station in the Park City Fire District. And they have serviced everything that we've ever had over the last 25 years. They don't have the slightest problem with doing that. We're 45 minutes from here on a good day. And in the winter, you can't get there at all. So all of our emergency needs have been serviced by Summit County. That's just the way it's been for 25 years. And in fact, they have a little key lock on our gate that they can access it at any time. So, and by the way, the grade on the road, the steepest, we have one little piece of our driveway that's 9%. Everything else is under 6. Dave Rich has been up there many, many times. They've used our property to access water to put out the fire that took place on the Mormon Flat Campground about 15 years ago. They used our property, our water, and everything to deal with that. He's very familiar with the situation, and I've worked with him over the years. to mitigate fire impact. We've done a lot of that big giant mulching machines that clear foliage around. We've done everything that anyone has ever asked of us, from the county, from the state, everyone. So we're not just a bunch of hicks out there trying to, make do. We've been very conscientious for a long time. We've lived there for 24, but we've owned the property for over 30. So just to address those issues.
I have a question for Josh or maybe Janet. I don't know who this would fall under, but for a conditional use permit, if it's granted, in the future, could they go through the process to apply for a rezone on that MU 160 land? Would they be a normal rezone agreement? Could they go through that process?
Property owners could apply for a rezone. However, I would look at the future land use map. I would look at surrounding properties, the sizes that are around them. I would look at surrounding development, and then I would make a recommendation based on that. And based on the current surrounding uses, the current property sizes, I would recommend denial for any rezone that would change it from MU160 or F1. Everyone has a God-given right to apply for a rezone on their property. It doesn't mean they're going to get it.
Okay, thank you. Janet, do you want to talk about what you put up?
Yeah, so I think for that MU 160 zone, for legal conforming lots existing on or before March 1, so that doesn't apply. For legal conforming lots created after, the minimum acreage for a recreational dwelling shall be 320 acres or 1/2 section. So,
Again,
and
it's
then
talking-
it does add on
Yeah.
the owner's acknowledgement and responsibility addressing the access and maintenance of the roads.
Again, this is recreational dwelling, which is actually defined in the land use table as a specific land use allowance. And if Jeremy can go to the multiple use agriculture section land use table and scroll down. Keep going. It's an R. You passed it. Now you're in T's. Keep going. Recreational facilities.
It's
rights of way.
public. I mean, it's private, so it's a P. Is that what we're looking at, the private park?
No,
Oh, you want
there's
the-
recreational.
Oh,
So the private park recreational. Yeah, sorry. My eyes don't work as well anymore.
I would go up, are we looking at for this conditional use?
No, the recreational dwellings are only allowed. It's like a cabin, and there's an allowance. They're allowed in F1. It's one of the only residential uses that's allowed in F1. So scroll up. Yeah,
Look up at dwellings.
yeah. Yeah, so recreational dwelling is specifically called out under the allowable dwellings that people can put on properties. And it's allowed with a C1 in MU 160, F1, and 820. So that definition clearly defines that land use, but it is not related to the private resort with recreational complexes
Sorry about
or dwelling complexes.
Sorry about that, Josh.
Sorry,
Wanted to go later tonight.
it's all good. 10 now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Jeremy, can you go back to where you were typing in the conditions? Maybe put in site plan review or approval at staff level. No, put that up for number 1. site plan. It's going,
Does that include the county engineer reviewing it?
maybe put for health, safety, and welfare of the property owners. Or property owners.
Residents.
So we need to identify what we need to mitigate. You know, we can add a condition.
Minimizing units or having a maximum if we can say due to safety concerns or access or whatever our reasoning is, if we want to do that. I think we just have to have a reason.
I don't have a good reason.
If reduced traffic, so in case of emergency.
If there's one main thoroughfare.
Typically, you get about 30 lots, I think, or 33 lots in a subdivision. with
For one access.
One access.
You could say 100.
It's 30, and even that can be mitigated if you sprinkle every home and things like that. So there's other things you can do to mitigate the number of access points you have in a 30-lot subdivision or more. And I will add that multifamily allows you to have up to 200 residences without a secondary access.
And I don't,
I was just, I know.
and I don't have a problem with the resort up in that area. I think that's appropriate place for a resort. Private resort.
So what is it you're trying to mitigate, Debbie? I'm not.
Mine was just the health and safety. People that will be using the resort.
So are you saying like limit to 18, or is that what you're saying? What are you? I'm not following what you're.
Well, I wasn't, no, I was more
Fire-
talking about.
Fire
just-
ingress, egress, I think, is what she's.
I was talking about having a site plan for that. For emergency vehicles.
Josh, what I'm confused a little bit about is you said we can't deny it because it's a shall approve, but we
Yes.
still have a denial.
Unless you can't mitigate.
Yeah, standard form, we include approval of the conditions, or denial. I can't stop you from making bad legal decisions. So, if you choose to deny it,
If you can think of anything else that needs to be mitigated for a condition, I would prefer we do not deny, because I can't think of something that cannot be mitigated. If you-
Steve, are you still under the?
No, I don't have a problem with it either. I just don't like. That's why I say I just look down the road. I look at what things are going to become. That's my problem. So I don't have a problem with his ideas, his concept. I don't have any problem with that. As long as it stays private, I'm good with it. So, what? So, what conditions do you have? Did you want to do a number, or limit the number to 18 then?
That's what we're saying we really can't. I was trying to go at the angle of one ingress egress at 30, but Josh is like, well, we could sprinkle and have it more than that, and the fire marshal may still require sprinkles.
I don't think it's ever going to go to that anyway, and when it does, we're going to be probably long gone to death parents.
Hey,
I'm okay with no.
be careful over there. I'm gonna be here a while.
You will.
We got a youngin' on, a couple of them.
So I'm okay with it. I don't.
So anything else? We have the existing conditions that staff put on.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the Pioneer Ranch CUP application 24.047 to allow for private recreational camp and resort at the property identified by serial number 01-001-008, parcel ID 00-000-0180, and is approximately located at 12,500 South Jeremy Ranch Road near Porterville, based on the findings with the conditions listed in the staff report dated September 26, and is modified by the conditions and findings below, that a site plan review at staff level shall be required for the proposal to ensure that it maintains the health, safety, and welfare of the property owners of the site.
I have a motion by Member Bishop. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Murray. Any discussion on this motion? Vote.
I think I'd still like to do a C3, just to let the council take a look at it so they're aware of it, maybe.
You have a motion on the table. You can ask if they want to modify the motion to include that. If that's not added, then a vote
Take a
of the
vote.
motion that's on the table needs to take place right before anything else.
That was just my discussion, just how I thought. You feel like you're okay with it, or if you want to modify it?
I'm done.
He has a motion. So we'll take a vote. There might be others that agree with you, and if you want to just make a recommendation, then you will vote no on this motion, and then a new motion could be made. So all in favor of approving, say
Aye.
aye.
No.
Any opposed? One opposed. So we have the four. Oh, you,
I'm opposed, but we
okay.
still.
We
you
have
guys wanna-
3 in favor, opposed,
2 opposed.
2 opposed, Member Maloney and Member Little. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item is the plat amendment. It's always fun to say.
Madam Chair, the plat amendment is application 24.030. The applicant being Todd Platt. The location for the project is located approximately at 4410 South Highway 66. The acreage total after the proposed lot line adjustment, Madam Chair, would be 1.06 acres. The general plan future land use designation has this as rural residential 1 and agriculture, and the zoning map actually reflects that as both rural RR1, rural residential, and agriculture A20 split. And the request is for an amendment to Lot 2 of the J and L subdivision to adjust a lot line between the property owner and a neighboring parcel. This comes after a recent sale of the property. The total acreage being added to Lot 2, Madam Chair, is 0.05 acres, or about 2,000 square feet, 2,900 square feet. A review has been done according to the plat amendment standards as contained in our county code. The county engineer, the Morgan County Fire Department, planning and zoning, with the zoning administrator at the head of that, recommend approval of this. The county surveyor has some outstanding comments left to address, but overall he's recommending approval with the condition that those outstanding comments be addressed. And those can be taken care of final prior to the recordation of this plat amendment. Otherwise, I believe the applicant is present tonight, Madam Chair, and staff is happy to answer questions from the commission. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
I don't even need to talk to the applicant.
You what?
Don't even want to talk to the
Yeah,
applicant.
you don't want to. We'll make his evening. So, any questions for the applicant? Questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll be ready for motion.
Madam Chair, I move we recommend approval to the County Commission of the J&L subdivision, First Amendment application number 24.030, approximately located at 4410 South Highway 66 near Porterville, based on the findings listed in the staff report dated September 26th, 2024.
Okay, a motion by Member Wilson. Do I have a second?
I second.
I'll give it to Member Maloney, second by Member Maloney. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Okay, the next item is our first legislative item will be a public hearing and a discussion decision on the Cottonwoods Development Agreement.
I think your microphone clicked off, did it? Just for the members of the audience, the Wilkinson Development application to amend the Cottonwood Development Agreement affects Phase 9, which is south along Old Highway Road. It does not affect the agriculture open space owned by Mr. Cameron Russell. So we've gotten a lot of calls about that. I just wanted to clarify before Jeremy gives his presentation.
So the application number is 23.072. The applicant, Matt Wilkinson, is in the audience. And the request tonight is to amend the Cottonwoods Development Agreement to remove property from the overall Cottonwoods Master Plan. The acreage is confusing. It is 189.63 acres overall. And it almost looks like there's 3 parcels involved, but there are 2. One larger parcel is disjointed from the property just south of the reservoir with a separate parcel in between them. And again, this coming from Phase 9, the applicant seeks to withdraw from the development agreement. And of course, the applicant can talk to their intentions if they so desire, but overall it's to not be subject to, well, to have the land not be subject to the development agreement and the standards therein, but rather be subject to the underlying zoning to return to more agricultural zoning provisions. Staff isn't exactly recommending approval of such a request, as the original request is to remove the parcels from the development agreement entirely. The removal of acreage, which was included in open space calculations for the development agreement when that was debated in a rezone years ago, does present a bit of a conflict. On one hand, the land's removal undermines the integrity of the development's open space requirements and how those calculations were figured. On the other hand, the applicant is requesting, it is restricted from utilizing their property for its intended purpose under the current zoning, and zoning at that point, perhaps. Instead, staff is issuing something of a separate recommendation that the development agreement be amended to retain the land within the open space calculations of the Cottonwood development. The amendment should also specify defined long-term agricultural use for the property owner and low-density residential development for the parcels in perpetuity by modifying the layout of the lots from something like a conceptual development plan to allow for the 198.63 acres to be developed and used for single-family homes and agriculture purposes. And staff has talked about with this to the applicant about this kind of separate recommendation. So to be clear, we're recommending denial of the applicant's request and what they submitted an application for. But staff sees a way to work with perhaps both parties here, the HOA, the development agreement, the Cottonwoods, and the Wilkinson family and their desires on how they wish to use their land. Happy to answer questions, Madam Chair, and again, the applicants in the audience.
So to clarify, we're not saying work with the HOA. That's the county doesn't care what the HOA wants. We only care what's in our code and the entitlements that were granted. So while we oppose pulling it out of the development agreement, The applicant could redesign the lot layout and the street layout to accommodate what he wants to do, which would allow for large lot development while maintaining the open space of Phase 9. So I think there's a way we can get there. You might want to talk to the applicant before you open up to the public hearing.
Thank you. We'll have the applicant come up.
Is it possible to
Matt,
ask
can you, state your name for the
Sorry.
record?
Matt Wilkinson? Is it possible to ask for a continuance? We got a little bit of information right before the meeting, and I'm ill prepared for this because of that. Is it possible to ask for a continuance?
Yes, he can request a continuance. I would recommend that you ask him how long it would take for him to be ready to come back with either a redesign or a modified request, and then continue it to that date certain so that notifications do not have to be sent out again.
Is a month reasonable?
How long do you feel you need? Do you need 4 weeks?
What's that?
Do you need 4 weeks, 6 weeks? I mean, how long do you need?
I need a month. I need 4 weeks.
Be October
I'm gonna have-
24th.
I'm going to have Jeremy come work the computer so he can find our meeting schedule.
Yeah, October 24th would be,
Did you ask me a question? Okay. Because no one was talking, and I assumed it was my turn, so I didn't.
no, he's checking the date.
Uncomfortable with silence?
Okay.
October 24th would be basically 4 weeks from today. That would be our second meeting in October. If he feels that that's the time needed, then my recommendation would be to continue it to that date for him.
Okay. And it would probably be better also to have a public hearing tonight. Since the public's here.
Yes, you could hold the public hearing, get comments, and then it
And
would
continue
be, and then continue it. At the next meeting, it would not be a legislative item. It would be listed as a administrative item because the public hearing would have already been held.
On October 24th, was there some training that some of our members were going to that we won't be back for?
Yeah. So I think
That's
we
the
were going
one
to
in
move that
Utah
meeting.
County.
We were going to move that meeting. That's the one in Provo. That was the meeting we talked about moving.
In order to move a meeting, it requires a motion from the, and if you're going to move the meeting, I would recommend you move it to the following week
It's Halloween.
or the previous week.
But he needs 4. So the previous doesn't do him any good.
Well, then why don't we go 6? That gives me a little more time.
That would be the first meeting in November.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
November 14th, okay, we'll.
That's
Can we just cancel the 24th meeting? Or is that not?
We can discuss that at the end of our meeting, but yeah.
You can discuss that during staff business and questions, and then make the motion then.
So, thank you, Matt. Right now, we'll go into public hearing. I'd like a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Member Wilson and a second by Member Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're in public hearing. Now's the time to come forward if you'd like to make a comment regarding this agenda item. You come up to the lectern and state your name.
Raylene Blocker from Mountain Green. I'm curious how we're having a public hearing before we know what Mr. Wilkinson's going to present. Because we don't know what he's going to present in 6 weeks. So I don't know what my concerns will be if I don't know what he's presenting.
Tina Kelly, Mountain Green. I'm not sure what he's going to propose, and I'm sure I'm not going to have a problem with it. But to the point that Member Wilson made about perpetuity, there were negotiations made, a formula followed, and trade-offs made way back when, promises made, a development agreement was written. So that open space wasn't just to provide open space for the development. It was given, there was give and take, and density was given for that open space for the community at large. So I'm just wondering, and I tried to read the application and tried to understand staff's explanation of what their recommendation is, but I'm wondering how it affects the density that was given and how much. I was really concerned to hear that open space was being taken out of when that was supposed to be there for the community permanently. But I'm also wondering how it affects the density of the subdivision. Thank you.
My name is Mindy Anderson. I also live in the Cottonwoods, and I share Tina's concerns. You mentioned it sounds like you've done calculations on the green space percentage. I'd like to know how that's changed, because those of us who live there, that was part of what we agreed to live with, right? And so it feels like it's getting blown up in little parts. So I'd just like to know what that recalculation is and how we stop this from continuing. I'm happy to let them go. I have nothing against them or what they want to do. My concern is what it's doing to the development agreement that exists. Thanks.
Chris Wilkinson. As I listen to the debate here today, I'm grateful for an opportunity to use a voice. And what I haven't heard yet is anything concerning the developer. As I listen to Councilman Wilson say about how do we take better care of our future, and it seems that there was a contract over a decade ago that was in default. And now today we're here talking about that again. And the county is having to defend. And if I understand by the few comments here already, hoping to hold a density. And yet a decade ago we knew that the developer no longer owned that property. And I guess I'm unfamiliar with why a developer could tie up property that he doesn't own yet. And how could we keep that from happening again? And I guess that's my comment is that how can we hold our developers accountable when they make a development, and of course the Cottonwood, and that development was greatly based on the fulfillment of the contract. And then so is there any teeth in Morgan County to the next developer that would default like that? And I don't know, can I ask a question like that? And is there?
No, this isn't a back and forth. We
Gotcha.
take your comments and
All right, thank you.
thank you. Any more comments? Okay, seeing none, motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Member Little and a second by Member Bishop to go out of public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Josh, to a couple of comments, can we still have a public hearing at the next, the
Continuance.
November 14th meeting?
Yeah, you can hold. You'll just have to open it. I will list it as administrative because the state requirements for holding a public hearing have been met. But you, as the planning commission, can make a motion to open it back up for public hearing comments. But it'll take a specific motion from the planning commission to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, ready for a motion for continuance to our November 17th meeting? 14th, excuse me, yeah, I wrote wrong.
Madam Chair, I recommend we move application 23.072 to our November 14th meeting.
We have a motion for continuance to our November 14th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, second.
Sir.
And a second by Member Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, the next item is again another public hearing. This is a Highway Commercial District Code text amendment.
Madam Chair.
Before you begin, maybe wait for the members of the public that are wanting to leave so that you can continue without disturbance. Give them a little bit of time.
Madam Chair, application, or the Highway Commercial District Code text amendment is application number 24.042. The applicant is Wasatch Peaks Ranch LLC with a representative in the audience tonight. And if I could, Madam Chair, I'd like to just speak about Kyle here for a second. Kyle, he's an inspiration to me. He's played college football. And he had cancer. Was it not colon cancer? No, something else. Never. And he's gone through a lot of appointments, and he's beating that cancer. And he's here tonight, and it's just inspiring to have him here. And so the request tonight, Madam Chair, is to approve an amendment to the Morgan County Code, specifically to Section 132, which is actually on your screen up at the moment for the use table. To include two new, let's say, rows in the use table to add references to public facilities, public service facilities, and quasi-public facilities and services and government-operated essential service facilities as permitted uses in all commercial districts. And that's also represented in the next code section shown on your screen, 155.3133 for height regulations, to add code reference, code language to reference those services and facilities.
Jeremy, if I can interject really quick. The reason Wasatch Peaks Ranch submitted this application in the first place is that there is commercial highway property near where they're at, which is currently unoccupied. They wanted to use it for their private fire district to have their fire station. When they came in and we looked at our code, I thought this would be slam dunk. Yep, you can use that property for a public use or a quasi-public use. But these entries are somehow missing from our code. I don't know if they were taken out previously or whatever, but these sections, as Jeremy was presenting, that's why this is being brought for you. WPR paid the fee for the application to get this moving because they need to use a piece of property for a fire station.
And more specifically, to add to that, Wasatch Peaks Ranch has entered into an interlocal agreement to provide fire services to its members that includes its own fire station or future fire station, and then utilizing county fire services. So staff finds that this was likely just some sort of inconsistency, perhaps oversight, where this language was left out or taken out, maybe with some other amendment. But it it thereby restricts the county from providing public or quasi-public services, like restricting it. And so this language would add that, would take care of that inconsistency in our code. If there's not time to pull up the reference, then
I would reverse what you just said. Our code restricts it completely because it's not listed as a permitted use. So because it's not listed as a permitted use, it's absolutely prohibited. And so in order to allow for those types of uses in these types of zones, there needed to be a code text amendment. Yeah.
Yes, and section 155.134 talks about government-operated essential service facilities. The next section, 155.135, no, that's not right. 155.152 references fire stations, public utility buildings, and etc. As well in the code. So it's like there's references to it. It's like kind of ghostly, I suppose, and adding those references perhaps back or in this form would take care of the issue, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for staff or the applicant?
I have one. So the addition is, and governmentally operated essential service facilities. Is this going to be governmentally operated?
No, the addition is the two inserts into 155.132 use regulations. Public facilities or public service facilities, exception governmentally operated essential service facilities such as police, fire, ambulance, substations, and animal control facilities. That's being added in its entirety. Public schools and governmentally operated essential service facilities is also being added in its entirety because those are completely missing from our code. And then 155.133 height regulations is just stating that the maximum height for all buildings and structures in districts regulated by this chapter is provided as except as specifically provided for or in sections of this chapter, and governmentally operated essential services and facilities. So 35 feet is the requirement, but if there's a government facility that needs to go higher than this allows for an exception for stations or governmental, quasi-government type uses.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
So what would you consider a quasi-government?
A quasi-government facility is exactly what WPR's private fire district is. It's not government because it's private, but it provides a public service.
Thank you.
So we want to go over, in the height, it says shall be,
That's not changing.
that you're just leaving everything the same, just inserting the language.
Yeah, maximum height for all buildings shall be 35 feet, except as specifically provided in other sections of this chapter, and governmentally operated essential service facilities. So if there's a governmentally operated essential service facility, then they can get an exception.
More questions?
I don't have any problems with this.
Okay. Ready for a motion then?
Yeah, I can read it.
A motion for a public hearing.
Oh, that's right, it is a public hearing. Motion to go into public hearing, thank you.
So moved.
Motion by Member Murray and a second by Member Wilson, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now it's time for public comment. Public hearing. Okay, seeing none, motion to go out.
So moved.
Motion by Member Bishop,
Second.
and a second by Member Maloney, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are out of public hearing, thank you. Now ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move we forward a positive recommendation to the County Commission to amend Morgan County Code Section 155.132 use regulations, and 155.133 height regulations to include language for public facilities, public service facilities, quasi-public facilities, and services and government-operated essential service facilities as permitted uses in the highway commercial district, thereby adopting the applicant's suggested amendment as reviewed by staff based on the text listed in Exhibit A of the staff report dated September 26, 2024.
Give a motion by Member Wilson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
A second by Member Little. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Now we're on to business and staff questions.
From tonight's conversation about the one property, I think we should recommend a code change so we have a resort camp is not a permanent residence.
I'd go along with that.
Agreed.
You need to make a motion and then a vote. There
I
needs
wanted
be-
to talk to the group first.
Oh, well, everyone was saying, yeah, I go along with it, so I thought you might as well just make your motion and then.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we modify the code so
We direct staff.
we direct staff to modify the code to change the wording for camp and resort conditional use to have no permanent residences.
Okay, have a motion by Member Bishop. Is there a second?
Saying there'd be no, like zero.
So
or just one
that's
per
the
residence?
question I have. Like, if you had a piece of property and you wanted to put a property on, you wanted campsites for little
Sure,
cabins,
sure.
does that make any difference to you that way?
Well, this is under the CUP for the camp and resort section. I think Josh would have guided the applicant to have a different thing if it was just for a residential
You're right.
unit. But I get your point.
So any text amendment that would change this section legally will not change anybody that's applied for currently or has a private recreational ground or resort already approved. So
Correct.
it would only affect people in the future. Just
That was my intent.
okay.
So I have the motion by Member Bishop. I'll need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, and a second by Member Wilson. Now we need more discussion on this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Any more?
Yeah, I know we discussed last meeting, and I said I would do some digging, and I did. Eagle Mountain, Utah, actually just put in a ridgeline and view shed code in July of 2024, so I was able to pull a couple other counties, some in Utah, also like New York. So I guess, Josh, sorry, I'm just asking questions. But, so if we wanted to work on a code amendment that limits building on ridgelines, can I make a motion and then a vote and then you work on that? I don't give you a code, right?
No, you don't draft the code. I draft the code.
Sweet.
Because I'm the zoning administrator. I also slot it in when I can. Because how many do I have now? Do you know how many text amendments I've been directed to do? I've got at least 15, 20 that I got to do. So you can make a motion to direct staff to do this, and I will get to it.
I make a motion that I would like to add to our current code a text amendment around not building on ridgelines as well as protecting view sheds in Morgan County.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Maloney and a second by Member Bishop to direct staff to write more code. Any discussion on this motion?
But I did find good examples, Josh. And I said I would. I'm trying to make your life easier.
I appreciate that, but I reserve judgment until I can review it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any more business?
Did want to change the date of the meeting on October 24th or cancel the meeting completely. It's up to you how you want to proceed.
How is,
What does the docket look like?
yeah.
I don't remember that far out. We're planning the next meeting. I think there's 3 or 4 items on that one. I don't know of anything on the October 24th right now. So if you wanted to cancel it, I would cancel it now. And then we can push everything off to November 11th. Oh, wait, 14th. Yeah.
And also, that's what I also wanted to do, the area plans on that first in November too.
Maybe we can push those off a little bit further. Please.
Just like the text amendments.
Only been a-
We
I'm ready
can,
for-
we,
yeah.
how about the second meeting in November? Which is
I
Thanksgiving.
would just like to get it to, I'd like to get it to the county commission before the end of the year so they can,
I understand that. Here's my problem with it. The county commission has discussed, it's not for sure, but they've discussed giving me money to redraft, find a consultant to redraft the general plan according to county desires and how our community actually wants to be. I'm recommending that those area plans be redrafted and incorporated directly into the general plan. That's my goal. Not plans put in appendices like they have been in the past. These areas, from what I can gather, are important to the people in the county, and so they should have front and center in the general plan going forward. And so if we can hold off, I'm not saying we get rid of them. They need to be incorporated into the actual general plan themselves, and their current form isn't going to work.
right, so that's why I want to get them approved to get it underway so they are in place when we start the rewrite of the general plan. I'm just for a public hearing and then the possibility of making the recommendation to the county commission.
So the Mountain Green and Peterson area plans, they were written by a consultant following planning practices. There's things in there that need to change. The other plan that I've seen, was it the Stoddard?
Stoddard you've seen.
Stoddard area plan, it's 4 or 5 pages long. It talks about goals and objectives and all these things, but it's not written like that. It's written like it was a board meeting, and it's the minutes of the meeting. It doesn't do what the opening paragraph says it's supposed to do. So,
Well, mine is the Peterson Mountain Green.
correct.
Deal with that one and push it forward, and then the other ones can be addressed too later.
Right. Okay. But can we do that in December? The 2 in December?
Well, like I say, it doesn't give the county commission the time, so I would like to,
What if we moved our October meeting up a week rather than canceling it? And then we could work on the general plan then. We had a whole meeting, and whatever else gets added, because that's a lot around the holidays for
But
all of us to have.
it wouldn't be the general plan you'd be working on.
or
It'd be
the area plan.
Area
Yeah,
plan.
It'd
yeah.
be a public hearing, is what I'd like is a public hearing.
If you wanted to move the meeting to the week before, we could hold a work session prior to as well to give you a little bit longer to talk about.
That just, otherwise, to Debbie's point, that's a lot in November and December with holidays.
We need to renotice. Would it be a
Nothing's
public
been
hearing?
noticed yet.
Right, but if okay, so
We
we
could do
need
it
to
for the
notice that.
The 17th?
On the 17th.
We would advertise according to state requirements. The meeting has been changed. We'll update the calendar on our website. And then any items going to those meetings will be noticed accordingly. 10 days prior.
So we're okay with moving it up to the October 17th. We'll have a meeting on the 10th and then the 17th. If you'd like, if you think you need another work meeting before, that's fine.
I missed that. I'm sorry. What?
He's asking if we want the work meeting before that meeting.
Yeah, if you want the work session before, just let me know, and we can advertise it for a work session. We don't have to set that up now, though. We can talk about it at the next meeting, give you some time to think about it. But if you want a work session before, that's easy. We can set that up.
Would you like a motion to move the meeting up a week then to the 17th?
There does need to be a motion to change the calendar.
For a motion to change the calendar from October 24th to October 17th.
For the area plan?
Yeah, for our regular meeting. It'll be a regular planning commission meeting, and the area plans will be on there.
October 17th for our second meeting of the month for the Planning Commission.
So we have a motion to change the meeting to October 17th from October 24th. By Member Bishop. Do I have a second? Second by Member Wilson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm thinking.
We have all night, yes.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries it unanimous. Thank you. Any more questions
Yes,
for
I
staff?
have. Josh, I have a question. I think this is pretty well public knowledge. I saw that Nine Springs applied with the state to be a preliminary municipality or their own city. Are they still in the process with us to go through rezone?
I have not closed down the application. I'm assuming that I'm going to assume that they still want to go through the process with us. So we've set up the work group. I'm in discussion with our consultant, Bruce Parker, to talk about their current development potential with their zoning. I'm having those calculations put together right now. I'm having a map put together of the areas and the different zones that affect their property. And once I've talked to Bruce Parker and Garrett, we'll set up a meeting with the work group and reach out to the applicant to see if that's still something they want to pursue. But from my understanding is that they are using state legislation to allow for the pre-incorporation of a city, which gives them a certain amount of time to provide the infrastructure and the services.
And I will put together a PowerPoint on the because it's new. It's statutorily new. And it's a pilot program. And so I get to play with PowerPoint, so we'll get something put together for you guys.
So maybe a question for you, because I just saw it went into effect May 1st, and this is the first actually city, I think, in the state to go through this process or application. So then if it were to get approved at the state level by the lieutenant governor, what would be county versus city responsibility with that land?
It would be similar to the difference between Morgan City and Morgan County. We do not patrol their, well, I think our sheriff does patrol their roads because there's an agreement for the service. Morgan County Fire does provide fire service, but there's an agreement in place to do that. We don't provide their water or their sewer. They have their own municipal water, municipal sewer. They have their own government body and their own contractors to provide planning and engineering and everything else like that.
Attorney.
So, yeah, attorney.
There's a lot that goes to it.
They would be their own incorporated city, the second one in Morgan, and they would have to either contract or provide those services as any other city in the state, and they would have a certain amount of time to do that.
But they wouldn't have like their own school district, would they?
I don't have an answer.
No.
I don't know how the school district works, so I don't.
It doesn't matter. School districts
Yeah.
doesn't
Not
matter.
city specific.
Still be a county school Mr. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation.
Any more questions?
I guess I just got one question. Sometimes I'll get on to the website to look up the packet, and the packet's got the agenda items, but it doesn't have everything else. Is that what it's supposed to look like before? Like this morning I looked and it just had the agenda items and it didn't have all
Yeah.
the descriptions.
We provide the agenda and all the items in the packet to be posted on our website. So there should be a packet there. So you can either download it yourself from there, and if there's an error, if you could in the future give us a call, we can rectify that. But yeah, we provide both the agenda and the packet for our websites.
I just know we've had some members of the community want to know, and this is the first time they've seen a packet, and they don't know where to look, and sometimes I wonder
Yeah, it's our-
if they know it's there or not. Or
Yeah, it's on our website. It'll be on there every time prior to the meeting. I think we do it 10 days before.
Okay.
Also, there is the state website that can notify them of any upcoming public meetings or public hearings and what's on those agendas as well.
Okay, any more questions? Or does staff have anything for the planning commission?
I have absolutely nothing.
Okay, so the next item is approval of the minutes. If you've got any corrections that you need to turn in or talk to staff? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes.
I have a motion by Member Little to approve the minutes. Is there a second? A second by Member Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That would be Member Wilson.
Yeah. Time for adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move. Second.
Motion by Member Bishop, second by Member Little. All in favor?
Aye.